شكراً سيد أمجد لكلماتك. أتشرف الآن بدعوة صاحبة السمو الملكي الأميرة سمية بنت الحسن المعظمة والسيدة مها السعيد عضو هيئة مديرين جمعية إنتاج لنستمتع معهم بحوار ودي ثنائي عن الربحية وزيادة مشاركة المرأة في قطاع التكنولوجيا.
أهلا وسهلا فيك يا ستي. تسلمي. طبعا نحن بنتشرف بحضورك معنا، خصوصا انه شيء تك فورم وانت انسبيريشن فور اول ذا ليديز بين جوردن، فبنتشرف فيكي وبنتشرف بالجميع بالحضور.
ثانك يو.
بحب ابلش if you don't mind. طبعا كل حدا بيعرف مين حضرتك، واكيد لو بدي اعطي الاتشيفمنتس حتكون يعني مطوله، بس انا حبيت اختصر واعطي highlights على some of the aspects اللي related لليوم شيتك. For over 3 decades, Her Royal Highness Princess Sumaya Bint Al-Hassan has been a devoted supporter of using science and technology to drive change, particularly when addressing socio-economic challenges in the Arab world. Notably, at the age of 20 in 1991, she founded the Princess Sumaya University College for Technology, an institution that has since grown to become Jordan's foremost university for technology, the Princess Sumaya University for Technology. She also serves as the helm of Jordan's lead applied science research organization and science reference points, the Royal Scientific Society, as president and CEO. In addition to her roles as president of the Royal Scientific Society, chair of the university, and vice chair of the Jordan Museum, her unique perspective as an art historian by profession is evident in her commitment to integrating science, research, and cultural heritage to promote peace and prosperity. This dedication echoes her belief that science and culture heritage cannot be separated, and that to find solutions for the challenges of the future, we must learn from the past. Her influence extended globally, demonstrated by her chairing of the World Science Forum in 2017, the first time it was held in the Middle East, highlighting her dedication to fostering international scientific collaboration. Her Royal Highness is also actively involved as the school director and chair of the board of the Amman Baccalaureate School, and as the founder of the Queen Rania Center for Entrepreneurship, an essential component of Jordan First Technology Accelerator iPark. Through these initiatives, she has shown a strong dedication to nourishing entrepreneurship and innovation in the region, all while championing the role of creative education as a catalyst for positive change. Her continued commitment to working with young people and fostering innovation ecosystem stands as a statement to her desire to propel positive change in the Arab world and, of course, in Jordan. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And would like to address some questions so that we can take your wide experience in the matters of Jordan tech and the She tech environment.
Thank you.
My first question, if you may allow me, from your long journey in leadership in technology and education, and as a prominent advocate for science and technology in the Arab world, how do you envision the future of tech education in the region, and particularly in women and young talents in Jordan?
First of all, thank you, Maha, and thank you all of you for having me here this morning. And I do apologize for being a little bit late. As you mentioned, I am also a school director at the moment, and dealing with parents early in the morning is one of the things that keeps me quite busy these days. I just wanted to say that in terms of technology and education, of course, it's no longer a choice. As a region, as an Arab world, as a Muslim world, we have always had to innovate to survive. And I think that's one of the things which we all will notice in the coming few years, if I can, and I don't think any conversation can start without mentioning the tragedy that is Gaza today. We have to think about science for peace. We have to think about science and technology for a brighter future. We have to think about how using innovation as a tool for investing in human dignity and improving the quality of people's lives is the only way forward. And I think this is something where science and the worlds that I work in terms of science, technology, and innovation, and of course education, know no boundaries. We have to think pragmatically, but we also have to think without prejudice. We have to think that we cannot have borders that guide us and silos of gender or silos of creed or politics. We've got to be able to think of what is going to allow us to invest in improving prosperity and economic and socio-economic viability and resilience for fractured people and for failing economies more than any time before. So I really think that there is an opportunity now for us to think of these challenges and think about how we can use new technologies such as AI and others that are really going to help leapfrog and fast-track a process. Today in my organization, the Royal Scientific Society, for the first time, we see the life scientists working with those who are dealing with technology. Before, if you were a biologist or a chemist or a physicist, you wanted to keep away from the computer science faculty. They were computer science and we're the life sciences. Now you actually see the life sciences coming together with the future sciences, and it's becoming very, very exciting in this science revolution that we are seeing. And AI in particular is really catapulting that. It's AI that is giving the opportunity for researchers to be able to fast-track research. So when you might have had a research assistant or a staff scientist who was spending hours and hours going through papers over months at a very minimal fee, probably as some lowly intern at university, you can now see that happening in an hour, 50,000 research papers coming up with proper analysis. And so that's where it becomes very, very exciting.
Thank you. As in Taj, we have one of the main mandates is the she-tech aspect. So we would like to take your perspective on what are the key challenges and opportunities for women entrepreneurship in the tech sector in Jordan, and how can these be addressed so we also incorporate them in our mandates for she-tech?
You know, I think Taj in general has done so much, again, to propel women. And I think she-techs, you know, since 2018 till now, has really tried to show that. But it's still, there's a lot that we need to do in terms of attitude and in terms of culture. And while we're so proud of these initiatives that really highlight the role of women, I sometimes, if I can say so, and please forgive me for maybe being a little bit bold, I find them a little bit patronizing, because I really believe on working on a meritocracy. And I think that the moment that we start thinking about putting people into boxes, women here and men there, and quotas for women and so on, that's when we as women lose. And so I think more than ever before, we have to think about how we look at women and men on a basis of equality that can only happen through a meritocracy. And I think that's one of the things that was very exciting when I first started establishing PSUT, that we didn't look at quotas. We were looking at grades, and as the only private non-for-profit university in Jordan today, we still remain the only university that has a unique interview system and a unique entrance criteria in terms of our entrance exam. And that was where we were able to take the best of the best. We didn't care whether you were men or women, or whether you were from the north or whether you were from the south, and so many other issues that get put into putting us into our brackets. And that's where I think we can go forward. And so working with Intaj, I've always felt that you do look at people on what they bring to the table and what they have to offer, rather than, you know, are you Fulan? And are you somebody who is a woman who has 12 children at home? No, it's what are you able to actually bring to your company, and what is your company able to contribute to our economic growth and progress. And that's, I think, where we need to stop thinking about rate limiting factors and be able to think further about what it is we're actually contributing. How many people work in your companies? What are your overheads? How are you contributing to our GDP? And I think that's where it's going to start making the shift, because, you know, I can see some amazing female CEOs here who need to be counted, heads counted, and not respectfully just to be sitting on a panel when it's like, oh, we need a few more women so that the panel looks diverse, and we need to make sure that, you know, it's all working out well for the next forum that we have. No, I think what is really important is to say, you know, what is the combined soft skills that panel is actually being able to show? Where are the talents that we want to be able to showcase, regardless of whether you're a man, a woman, a senior citizen, or a child? And I think that's where we've got to get to, instead of just making sure that we're respectfully politically correct all the time. We've taken 2 women, so we'll take 4 men and carry on like that. It's just patronizing, in my opinion.
Absolutely, absolutely true. And luckily in the tech world, it's easier to do so, because it is based on what can you actually deliver. Okay. You've actually touched base on AI. I would like to go back there, as today AI, cybersecurity, and data science are the way to the future and crucial parts of a better tomorrow. Given your active role in promoting STEM education, what initiatives do you believe are most effective in encouraging women to pursue careers in technology and in the domains mentioned?
I really think that it has to start with our educational programs.
True.
I'm somebody who is a product of GCSEs and A-levels. I was sent to boarding school quite young. And you know what? I think that it was probably too soon for me to be able to decide. But I always wanted to follow my father, I suppose, and it was, you know, my father, as you all know, is somebody who has always been in love with the humanities, and he's always fueled that love for us of being deeply rooted and being able to really respect history and historical civilizations and so on. And so my calling was to go into the humanities and languages. Baba speaks 7 languages, and he insisted that we all learnt, we had to do English, Arabic, and French, and then we had to do another language on top, so I did German, yes, and so on. And, you know, I was in a school where my head of science told me that there was no way I could do the arts and do sciences, and in fact I was only allowed to study human biology. He was like, oh no, you're not going to do physics, chemistry and biology because you're doing all these humanities. And I loved art, and I loved design, and I loved all of those things. So I was actually forbidden to do science, and that was a huge challenge, and maybe that I had, because I then went on and did my A-levels, and I applied to London University, and alhamdulillah, I graduated from the Courtauld Institute of Art, and my thesis was on pre-Islamic sources of Islamic art and architecture. But I came home as a new graduate, and my father told me I had to work in somewhere called the Royal Scientific Society. And by the way, that was something we had to do every summer holiday. There was no sitting by the pool for my elder sister and I. It was like, اعرف وطنك, you have to go and do this and this and this. And so it was one summer بالمركز الجغرافي and one summer بالجمعية العلمية الملكية. And you know, we had to do all of that. And Baba was very emphatic that as girls, we still needed to, you know, get to know our country. And so it wasn't just علم أولادك وبناتك السباحة والرماية وركوب الخيل. It was اعرف وطنك. And so we had to go into all of these different places and so on. So anyway, I was sent to the RSS and told to see, you know, I want to report, Sumaya, this summer on trending market needs in Jordan. Well, there was a big boom, which was the IT boom. And clearly the market needs were computer science graduates. Sure. And so, you know, at that point we were working very closely with the RSS in the computer science department on developing a training course really for informatics. And so that's where we came up with the idea of why don't we actually establish a university college made for Jordanians, by Jordanians, for the Jordanian market needs, which was called PSUCT, Sumaya University College for Technology. But I didn't want to go into that whole story with people saying نعم ستي زي ما بدك ستي شو بفهمها ستي من ورا ظهري. يعني that was actually, because I knew that was what was going to happen.
Not
you know,
not you.
No, because يعني خريجة آداب يعني شو بعرفها بالتكنولوجيا صح؟ and الأكاديميين كتير بيخوفوا يعني في منهم هون يعني I remember those days there was our founding professor was Professor هشام غصيب وما كان يرحم يعني كان يعاملني إني أنا طالبة أنتي عشري يعني yes كان يحجمني all the time. I was like, no, hold on a second. The only way I can do this is to attend all these courses as a student. Wow. And that's what I did. Wow. And for somebody who hadn't been allowed to do science and technology, it was really difficult. But I did. I took a short-term degree in computer science so that I knew what was needed. And that's how I started my journey. And actually, the person who signed my certificate was the then president of RSS. So it's a nice story of evolution. And basically, I learned that while the level of teaching was very high, there were so many other aspects that were missing in terms of what we, you know, many of us who have had the privilege of being able to study abroad were taking for granted. And so that's where I really started trying to develop my dream, which is to develop the MIT of the Middle East. Yeah, and that's where PSUT was born, and where, inshallah, we will just continue to go from strength to strength. And just 2 months ago, we beat Stanford. So, alhamdulillah, you know, that's something which I'm really, really proud of. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, you had an early vision of what's important, and we see from the caliber that's been graduating from this university in real life how much it made a difference for people, and it is the future and the needed tech today, and the fintechs and the AI, and they stand out. When we recruit, we see them as standing out, so thank you for that.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, you were saying that you had diverse interests and education. So how do you integrate your passion for archaeology and history with your advocacy for science and technology? And why is the integration important for Jordan cultural identity?
I think it's simple. You can't plan for the future if you haven't understood your past, right? And I was very privileged when Her Majesty Siti Rania asked me to be her vice chairman at the Jordan National Museum. My career started when I graduated. I worked for a short time in England in the Victoria and Albert Museum, and then I came back to Jordan, and I was working in the Department of Antiquities and then moved to the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. And my boss was, Allah yarhamo, Maali Aqil Biltaji. And then I was right under Maali Alia Boran. She was my boss. And it was interesting because we started working on a database then of creating, it was called Jadis, and it was a database of all the Jordanian antiquity sites in Jordan. So I always had a foot in the door, and my passion will always be for archaeology and history and prehistory. So anyway, when Siti Rania asked me to help establish the Jordan National Museum, which we now call the Jordan Museum, it was tough because, again, I was up against academics and against these archaeologists who really saw things through the archaeological lens. And I was like, we don't have a museum-going culture in Jordan. We need to have a narrative. We need to have a story that makes people feel attracted. If you're just going to put tons, with all due respect, tons of, pottery lamps in a cabinet, people are going to get bored with that. So, the best story that we can tell is that the story of Jordan being a land of continuity, innovation, and change. And let's talk about a country or a land that has had 12,000 years of innovation. And so again, as I mentioned, about what will need to happen in Gaza, but is what we have been doing here in Jordan is that we have been innovating to survive for 12,000 years. And so when you think about statues, for example, like Tamathil Ain Ghazal, Tamathil Ain Ghazal are chemical inventions and innovations. They were the first use of plaster to make the human form, and that was a chemical invention. And how many of you in this room even know that the oldest statues of the human form in the world are in Jordan?
Wow.
And again, I challenge that so many people do not know that. How many people in this room know that the ancient and oldest water harvesting system is in Jawa, in the northeast of Jordan, and then of course followed by the Nabateans in Petra? How many of us know so many of these first innovations, which were firsts not just for Jordan but for civilization, and they all were born out of science and the technology of the time? And so it became very obvious to me that the story that we needed to tell in the Jordan Museum was one of innovating to survive, because that's what we as the people and the custodians of this land have done for so many thousands and thousands of years. And so when we talk today about water, about energy, about environment, about food security, and you go and look at what was being done, that was something which we now put in, again, a box called cultural heritage, but it was the cultural heritage that was leading us and giving us an eye into what we need to be focusing on in the future. And it's always been the elements of science and history that help us be able to transgress the challenges of the time. So, again, if you want to use science as an analogy, and sorry, I'm drifting a little bit.
Please go ahead.
But who would have thought that post-World War II Europe, that you would have seen France and Germany speaking with each other? Nobody thought that was going to happen. They were mortal enemies, and that was, the story of World War II. However, it was elements of coal and steel, which are inanimate elements of science, that brought a fragmented Europe together, and this led to the Second Enlightenment of Europe and the Second Industrial Revolution for Europe. And here we sit here today, whether it's here or in Morocco or in Egypt or Qatar or wherever you want, and people are talking about energy and water and environment. And once again, these are elements of science that have to bring us together in a fragmented Arab world. And we can say as much as we want, and we can stand as much as we want and all sing about Arab unity. But if I'm going to be really, really honest, the Arab world today has one school of thought in the GCC countries, one in the MENA countries, and one in the Levantine countries. And we need to all start thinking together and bring those elements of science together to really be able to think about a second enlightenment. And I say second enlightenment because we all know about the golden age of Islam. We all know that it was Ibn al-Haytham that was the first person to be able to discover the Chiara Obscuro. And it was, Fatima al-Fihriya in Morocco who created the first university in the world. And I just think all of these things are just forgotten by us because sometimes, unfortunately, we're so quick to run to imitate rather than to innovate. And that has been one of the biggest problems in the Arab world. Franchise is not everything. It's not about which university we can buy so that we have the name in our country. It's about how we can work on our own self-determination and our self-resilience so that we can, as I said, create things for Arabs by Arabs. And I always say in terms of Jordan, why I love my work between the museum and the work that we do in the science community is because every single day we're redefining our Arab identity and we're showing the world that it can be done from within. We don't need to buy a franchise from abroad to do so.
Sure.
And I would just add to that when we do look abroad, more than 75% of advanced degrees in science and technology in American universities alone are earned by non-Americans. That's something that we have to remember. And what are the percentages of people on those programs? Chinese, Indians, and Arabs. So, one of the things that really showed us during COVID was the fact that we had this ability to connect with our diaspora scientists more than ever before. And it was our diaspora scientists who really heralded that identity, that Arab Jordanian identity abroad, and showed us that we are everywhere. And that's why, when we were looking for solutions to, alhamdulillah, bil Jamia, we have a biosafety level 2 lab, which means we were able to test bats and test infectious diseases such as COVID and the coronavirus and so on. And we were actually communicating with scientists and Jordanian scientists in Sydney University. And it took us to go all the way to Western Australia to connect with our Jordanian partners through a pandemic to show us that we still have a really strong network there. And I think the crisis or the tragedy that is Gaza and what is happening in Palestine has also shown just what a large Arab community we have globally. And that's where we need to have pivots like the museum to be able to anchor us and remind us that this isn't something new. This is something that we've done for many, many, many millennia. It's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Actually, I have to say you are an example of achievements and knowledge with modesty, and that's something very special.
Thank you.
Looking ahead, what is your vision for the growth of Jordan's technology ecosystem, and how do you see it contributing to the broader economic and social development of the country? If we look at that aspect, the economical part as well.
Well, I feel very, very strongly about the fact that our schools need to be more connected to what's going on. And I feel that our universities are the same. And I don't believe that tertiary education has to mean a baccalaureate. I'm somebody who very much believes in vocational training, and I'm somebody who very much believes in hands-on training. And I think the more that we expand our innovation ecosystem to involve all stakeholders within it is important. So first of all, in terms of all the different layers of education. I think that is very, very important. One of the secrets to success at PSUT is that نحن عندنا لجان إرشادية لكل كلية. We have an advisory committee made up of people from industry. So we really tailor-make our curriculum to the market needs. And I think that's something that was really excited, and it actually preempted the REACH initiative. So when we were working on that, that was one of the things that the REACH initiative was like, aha, that's a nice idea, let's put that into the REACH initiative as well. And I think that has worked really well in terms of it. But I think also innovation ecosystems have to have that cross-fertilization of ideas from public sector, private sector, government and academia as well. And I think sometimes academia, the voice of academia is not brought in enough. It's, you know, again, when I say about having those forums where it's like, منجيب خبير مياه خلينا نحطه على panel because he'll look good يعني amongst the but it has to be much more deep-rooted in my opinion. So I think that the innovation ecosystem process is there, but we are now at the point where we can leapfrog that process much further. And I do think that in most countries where this has been successful, it's because the voice or the mashura al-ilmiya has really helped government decision-making on strategic direction. So it's something, and if there are members of the government here, then they will know that I've said this to many governments, and so I'm not saying it behind anybody's backs. I'm being very, very candid and saying you need to utilize your science reference points. You need to be able to have evidence-based decision-making, because that is the only way that we're going to be able to move forward, in my opinion.
Thank you. You know, it took a lot of time, but if you may allow me one last question. Throughout your career, what have been some of the most rewarding moments in your journey of fostering science, technology, and innovation in Jordan? And based on your own experience and achievements, what advice would you give to young women aspiring to make a mark in the tech industry?
You know, I think it's very difficult to single out different stories, but I think for me, benchmarking has always been a challenge. You know, I think when we started up establishing PSUT, I'd get people saying, and I still get people saying, بس نحن رقم واحد بالأردن, and I'm like, alhamdulillah, but where are we عالميا? That's what matters to me, you know, إنه لازم نسعى للعالمية دائما, and I think that's something that is really important. So I think نحن بالجامعة, when we went through the journey of accreditation, and I thank our now president of PSUT. She was then the Dean of the School of Engineering, first female Dean of Engineering in Jordan. We went through ABET accreditation for our School of Computer Science and a School of Electronics Engineering. And that, you know, to get the highest level of accreditation globally for our two programs and to be the first university in Jordan to do so was something that made me incredibly proud. And the same now with, you know, people are surprised. A lot of people still say, oh, you have a business school at PSUT, how comes? And we are the only ACCSB accredited business school in Jordan as well, which is something which again shows that internationally we have got that standard. And I think it's probably retaining standards and you know, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So if we don't, I'm a علامة كاملة kind of person. If إذا ما بنجيب علامة كاملة بزعل, you know. So for me, it's always getting those علامة كاملة in anything that I do. I don't settle until I have managed to get to where I want to go to. So honestly, not just saying it flippantly like that, but when we as PSUT are the only university that is non-American participating in a global a competition in New York, which we did a few weeks ago. It was for the National Penetration Testing Competition, a cybersecurity competition. And we came out #1, beating Stanford and beating Amherst. That, again, is something that makes me really proud. So I think it's just, again, going back to maybe what I said at the beginning, credibility and meritocracy, to be able to arrive at things and to get these achievements on merit. That's probably the thing that makes me the most proud in my career. And inshallah, now my biggest challenge is the school. I find that really difficult. It's the most difficult thing I have ever done in my life. Dealing with parents and dealing with this generation is just a nightmare. It's a complete nightmare. But I just really, I think it's so important because these kids deserve better. And I think that these children, this generation, particularly what we now at school refer to as the COVID generation, they need to have that sense of belonging, and they need to recognize that it's okay to want to be local but think globally, but we've kind of lost that. We're kind of like this MTV generation that thinks that everything in the West is best. And I am trying to sort of carve out a situation where we can say, no, the way we do it in Jordan is best because we have the privilege with the leadership and the networks that Sayyidina brings to us of being able to really take the best of everything and then put it into a mold that makes it the best model for Jordan. And that's where I think you come back to Jordan and you say that this is where Jordan can always be pragmatic and in the lead, inshallah. So that's what keeps me going.
KPIs كلهم ياخذوا علامة كاملة.
Inshallah, yes, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Your Royal Highness. It's been great, and I'm honored to be with you in this panel. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And by the way, aren't you an IB graduate?
I am.
She's a baccalaureate graduate, so we have to. We want to have more baccalaureate graduates like you sitting on the panel.
Thank you
so you so much. Thank you all.